So I believe we can start. So sorry for joining late. Like I said, it was just an unfortunate incident. So I'm just going to start recording these and we can start these today. Okay, please confirm you can see my screen. So what I'm going to be doing, since the focus is actually on the labs, I'm going to be dividing this screen into two. So you'll see what I'm going to do is for you to, so that you guys can see the instruction on the left while I perform, the lab on the right. So, but it's still going to be like this screen. So just give me. Okay, so I believe we are good. Yep. All right, so for you to start this, since this is actually related to the AZ fundamental labs, so what I'm going to do, because there is no, I've not seen a GitHub repo that actually listed all the labs that we are going to be going to. But you can actually find those labs within that Microsoft Learn documentation. For you to access that, the best way is for you to just search for, or if you know the URL, you can do aka.ms slash az900, and you go. It is not compulsory you type in that. You can search for Microsoft Azure Fundamental, and it takes you to that the link also. So let me just so you're not gonna see it there. So we can see the sandbox, which is fine, which is what we are going to be using today. I want to see the study guide. No, not the study guide. Okay, these are the courses. Yeah, this is what I've been looking for. So I'm just going to, try to search for those lab within these links. So once I get one, I'm going to share my screen. Like I'm going to divide my screen into two. So, okay. Okay, should be within here. Just give a minute. I believe I will just what I'm just going to do is let me just go to my YouTube channel and get the links. I have the link within the videos though, so that we don't. I can share the link later also. I know the links are actually within this documentation, but it might take some time for me to be able to, get those. So the best for me is just to go within the fundamental labs. So just give me like 5 minutes for me just to get all the links, then we can actually start this. Um, okay, I'm gonna copy this link. I'm so sorry. So I'm gonna put this out. Yeah. Okay, so that's fine. Yep, this is the first one. So I'm going to pull it on the right while I perform. Okay, for now, since I've got the link, so I'm not sure I should. Let me just have this one here. There are some that I need the, I might need to just divide my screen. Okay, so this is the first lab, and the labs actually talks about how you are going to be exploring sandbox within the Azure fundamental or within the Microsoft environment. Now, there are different ways of accessing the Azure environment, or interacting with those resources within the Azure space. But for now, we are going to be leveraging on the sandbox. So if you do not have an Azure account, maybe a student account, a Microsoft free account, or you don't even have access to maybe the enterprise version, maybe a work account where you can actually do your testing, or whatever um, way you want to use to actually access the environment. Um, so the best way for you to interact with Microsoft resources, or the Azure resources, or get access to the Azure environment would be you leveraging on the sandbox. Now, that's what we're going to be looking at. All the lab we are going to be doing today, except one when we get to the resource log. I think that's the only one you might not be able to use this sandbox. So when you guys start um, doing the same, going to the labs, if you do not have access to maybe the student account or free account, or your subscription has actually been consumed on your environment, you can reach out to me. I can create a sandbox for you within my environment, or even invite you to my environment. But like I said, for now, what I'm going to be doing is just to leverage on this sandbox environment. I might need to just send you the links to all these labs so that you guys can also go to the links, if need be. But it's compulsory, just for you to replicate also. So we can see, um, the first thing is for me to sign in to activate that particular sandbox. One good thing is you have access to send 10 of these sandboxes every day. So once I start using it now, you will see 10 out of 10, 9 out of 10, And one thing is, since we are going to different labs, the sandbox I'm going to be activating now might not work for the next lab. So I would advise, for every lab you want to go to, it will be best for you to, reactivate that particular sandbox. The reason being that when we start activating those sandbox now, or the sandbox, is going to assign permissions that are just necessary to complete that particular lab you are going to. So the permission might be different from permissions needed for the next lab, and that's why advising for every sandbox, or for every lab you want to go to, just reactivate the sandbox. So this is what we are going to be looking at. You have the tax one. I'm so sure we've done this, before, but let's just go through it since I said we are going to be looking at all the labs today. The tax one is for us to be able to use PowerShell to have access to our Azure environment. Yep, that's fine. Then the tax two is for us to use Bash. We talked about different tools, how to interact with the Azure environment. And I said for every tool you are leveraging on, like the API is the ARM. So everything you want to do, we still need to communicate with ARM, but you can leverage on different tools just to communicate, or work on resources within your environment. So the first one for us is working on PowerShell, which is the PowerShell CLI. Then the next one is working on the Bash, Bash CLI. Then the next one is for us, to use the Azure CLI interactive mode. You will see the difference between the other, CLI tools that we're looking at, the PowerShell, talking about the normal, Bash CLI also. This interactive mode, it gives you suggestion of, keywords that you might need to type, keywords that you might want to use or leverage on. Then the last one will be the Azure portal, So this just gives us this complete avenue to, or access to all the tools. Not all the tools, there are some other tools, that we are still going to be looking at, but they are not part of, but these are at the minimum. So let's start with this. Now, I will tell you when this sandbox has been activated. The first thing we need to do is just to, you know, click on sign in to activate the sandbox. But one thing is when you're trying to sign into the sandbox, you need to have a Microsoft account, a Microsoft account to be able to do that. So my Microsoft account, Learn account, is what I'm using to sign in now, to explore this particular lab. So now I'm just going to wait for this to activate. You're going to go through some verification. So let's see. Um, I really don't like doing this, but it's something that you need to do. So I'm just looking for these. So don't be angry when you are told to complete this particular, so it happens to everyone. Okay, that one. Then let's see again. We have all the time, so okay, this is two. Then this is the bike, and okay, that's the bike. Okay, I'm so sorry. It looks like I mixed it up. So this is the bike. Yep, yep. No way, no way. This is one thing I don't like about this thing, but okay. Yep. Mm, I hope this doesn't reload again. That would be so frustrating. Yep. Okay, so now I have a robot trying to prove I'm a woman being. So it has not been activated. We still need to review permission. Like I said, when you're going through this, you need to make sure you do this, or else the necessary permission might not be assigned. So that's that. So now you can see it was requesting permission to log into that particular sandbox. Just click on accept. Then all the permissions would have been given. So let me just wait. Now it's checking the sandbox if I've activated a sandbox before now. It's verifying the permissions, creating the necessary resource group. So just hold on. Now you can see it's assigning those roles. So that's what I said. So you need to make sure that whatever you need to do. Now it's creating a storage account. Now why it's creating a storage account is the fact that when you're leveraging on the CLI in Azure, the cloud shell, you will need a storage account, for you to be able to leverage on that. So if it's the first time you are doing that, you would see, a storage account being created for you. Oh my word. Um, this is the problem. I've got two, just give me a minute. I've got two accounts linked with this, my Gmail account. Um, Now it's logging into the wrong one. Okay, I'm just going to leverage on another account. Let me see if I can use this my Outlook account. Yep. Oh my. Okay. Give me a minute. I'm so sorry. Sometimes it doesn't just go the way you expect it to go. So these are possible, issue you might be facing. So I'm just going to okay. So this is it. Send me the code. Okay, so for sure that one doesn't have, you know, um, I'm just going to change this and because I do not want to mix it with the one I'm currently using. So I'm just going to take Nigeria. So this might be the first thing you're going to be seeing. Um, all right, that's fine. Okay, let's see. It looks like I've been able to authenticate using this particular one. So it's going to be a verification process again. I don't know why. Let's see. This seems to be a little bit faster. Okay. um, Yep. So let's just wait. Just gonna review my permission. That's fine. Okay, accept that again. This will not give me that same problem though, because I've got only these accounts tied to that Microsoft account. So we should experience the same thing. Okay, why this one is great, and let me just continue looking for the other. Okay, that's I'll just so you can see what's going on. Now the sandbox has been activated. Time remaining for each of for the sandbox is 59 minutes. So once you activate your sandbox, you only have access to that particular sandbox for an hour. And you can see it says I've used 1 out of 10 sandboxes for today. So if I decide to continue working on different labs, after the 10th time, I will not have access again, except maybe I want to use another a different account or so, But this particular account only have access to 10 sandboxes in a day. So now the sandbox has been activated. How do I know? You can see I'm currently logged into the bash space. You can decide to toggle this from bash to PowerShell. You can see. So this is the Azure Cloud Shell. When we finally log into the Azure portal, I'm going to show you, within the Azure portal where you can actually, access the Cloud Shell also. So let's start with these. The first tag says we should actually use the PowerShell CLI. And like I said, we are currently logged into the Bash CLI. We are not logged into the PowerShell CLI. So the best way to do this is for us to switch back by clicking on this particular button that to toggle it back to the PowerShell. So if I click on this, it says switch to PowerShell, yes, which is fine. And if you want to switch back to Bash, depending on what you are used to, depending on what you want, So for me, um, I might be more um conversant with PowerShell scripting, for other people, it might be Bash for them. So, but you can actually do all that within the Cloud Shell, within the Azure environment. So, what will be the first thing I'm actually running here? I told you guys there is nothing serious there. This just wants also get like the date, and the way the PowerShell script works, we have the noun and the verb. That's just it. So when we start creating resources within Azure environment, this is what you're going to be seeing. So for every module that we are running, would see something like AZ account, AZ account for us to be able to log in. So you will see something like connect AZ account, get AZ resource, something like that. So we always have the verb. What are we performing? Is it are we creating a new resource? You will see new hyphen whatever resource, maybe storage account or whatever resource you're trying to create. So that is what you're going to see. So just have it in mind when you're running the PowerShell, command. Always comes with the verb and the noun. So for now, let's focus on what we are trying to do now. It's just for us to get the date. And how do we get the date? It's just to run this particular command. I'm just going to copy and paste that command, and it says get date. If I click on this, it tells you, the date, and it tells you the timing. Um, you know, the next one is for us to check the version of, the AZ that we are actually running. AZ is actually a module within the Azure environment. So what version are we currently running? This is going to tell us the version of the CLI. So check AZ version, and it tells, okay, the Azure CLI you're running is the latest, which is 2.71. Azure CLI Core, CLI Telemetry. What are some of the extensions? You do not have to worry yourself about all these, but very soon you will find out. So that's just us, trying to run a PowerShell command within the Cloud Shell environment, just to see, what are some of the tools that we can actually use in interacting with the Azure environment. The next thing for us is to switch back to Bash CLI for us to be able to run the Bash script. So I'm going to switch back to the Bash CLI by clicking on that button again. You can see the background has changed, the way this actually, was actually, like was has actually changed, So the first thing they need us to run is the get date. But okay, let's just run it. Let's just run it, and then I will come back to explain that. So definitely we are going to get an error. The error says get date is not a command. So it's not a command in Bash. This is a command in PowerShell. So like I said, when you're running a PowerShell command, it comes with the verb and the noun. But it doesn't, that's not the way it is when you're running, the Azure CLI, the Bash CLI, or, within the Azure environment. So it comes with a different syntax, a different command, depending on what you want to do. So for the CLI, I'd rather just run date instead of running, get date. But you do not need to worry yourself about this command, whatever command we are going to be leveraging on within the Azure environment, be it for us to be able to create new resource, for us to be able to, get the resources we've created before, for us to be able to update them or even delete, modify whatever, action you want to perform on those resources. You would see all those scripts. They are there, they are documented. So you do not really need to worry yourself about cramming most of these things. So the next thing for us is to run like upgrade. We know the version of those CLI, but we want to run an upgrade. How do we run an upgrade? Just this is what you will be expecting when you are running bash scripting. You always have like AZ, then maybe whatever you want to do, is different from the PowerShell, which is the other way around. So I'm just going to run this now. I'm just following this step by step. So it's telling me, do you want to continue? The version you currently have is 2.710. There's a latest version which is 2.720. Do you want to? I just say yes, and not able to connect automatically. Okay, so you're like, let's try that again. And if it doesn't upgrade, then I will just continue. Um, Okay, so not now. We've got so many things. So if we want to go find out why it's not upgrading, we can go in there. But I'm just going to continue. We don't really need that though. So the next one is for us to run this in an interactive mode. I hope this works because if this is failing, but let's see. So I'm just going to run the AZ interactive, to turn this into interactive. You can see that when I was trying to run the AZ upgrade, there was nothing being suggested for me. So if I update this to interactive now, you would see there will be a different, default is yes. You can decide to type yes. If they are saying the default is yes, I can continue by just clicking enter. That's default is yes. You can continue by typing the yes. And if you do not want to, switch this to interactive mode, you can just continue by, typing no. I've I just pressed enter because it says the default is yes, so it's just going to upgrade. I hope it upgrades. But if it finally moves to interactive or switch to interactive mode, this is what we are going to be seeing. Once we type, any command, maybe the AZ command, it's just going to suggest the other, commands that we can actually use with that particular AZ command that we've typed. So let's hold on. Okay, so it's taking all the time. I hope we can see what's going on too. So while this is on, let me just get the other ones. Okay, so this is the lab two. Okay, nice. So expected time around, right? This command preloaded. Okay, let's see. All right, that has actually switched to interactive mode. Oh, did I just? Okay, let's just complete this one. I wasn't planning to drop the YouTube link. I was just planning to drop the link for. So we've switched to interactive mode, and I'm just going to type AZ, and you can see what is going on. Now, this guy is just going to tell me what are some of the things that can go with, what are some of these command, I want to work with, leverage on. It's just going to give you, some hints, and you can actually type whatever you need, or if they are not listed, I can decide to say, okay, this is not what I need. But if I type out, it's just going to bring everything within that space, saying, okay, I want to deploy a resource, and it goes with the AC resource. But once I type RE, it's just going to list out everything related to what I've typed. So this is how the interactive works. At least, like I said, you do not need to come any of these things. It's just um, cool. Okay, so uh, that's that. Let's just continue with what we have. I'm just going to type version. You can see this has given me that suggestion saying, okay, do you want to go with that? Now you can see that's the version. I can try to upgrade this also by typing upgrade. Let's see if it works this time. Uh, Instruction. There's definitely an issue with that. I'm just going to continue and exit from this particular interactive section. Yep. So you can see that disappeared already. The last thing on this one is for us to now access the Azure portal. And how do I do that? All I need to do is just to click here. Because my account is signed in already, it's just going to sign me to that environment. One thing I need you to be mindful of is if you have got, oh my word, um, so you are also going to face that. So what's going on is Microsoft has made sure that for every account that will be accessing, the Azure environment, you need to have multi-factor authentication activated. So I'm just quickly going to activate that. I do not want to skip this one. So I'm just going to quickly activate this. Just give me a minute. Just give, okay. So you can make use of the Microsoft Authenticator for this guy, or you can also use other authenticators like the Google um, Authenticator and the likes, depending on what works for you. So I'm just going to continue this. Yes, I've activated that. Now click on that. It's going to ask me for, yep, 19. That's good. You won't be seeing that because that's on my phone. That's approved. Then once that is registered, it just take you, into that particular environment. The next time you want to do anything with that particular account, you should not be asked for this anymore. So let me just, so like I was explaining, if you have got like your Microsoft accounts, or you have created a an Azure account in the past, and you are using that email, the same email, to authenticate into the sandbox, be mindful of this. um, be sure you are actually logged in to the sandbox organization. Now you can see Microsoft Learn Sandbox. If you are seeing something else, you might want to switch that particular, so you can see I've got this particular account also tied to different organization. I just want to be sure that I'm within the Microsoft Learn sandbox while I'm, leveraging on the sandbox. So if it's something that you are actually logged into a different organization, you might want to switch, switch from whichever organization you are logged into to the sandbox environment. But for now, I'm not switching because I'm actually within the right environment. You know. So that's that about the first one. It just shows us how we can have access to, the Azure environment, be it by leveraging on CLI or by leveraging on the Azure portal, which is the GUI. Any question before we go on to the next one? I hope you guys are there. Okay. So the next one is to create an Azure resource, which is the lab number 2. Um, this guy activated the lab also, the sandbox. I think, I believe, uh, maybe the permissions are going to be the same. I hope so. So I'm just going to reload again because I can still see this is the sandbox, I've activated, before. But if that works for it, if not, because I tried to reload it, if not, I might need to just end this particular sandbox and try to reactivate it. But it looks like that's going to work for it. So here we're going to be leveraging on the Azure portal. We are not going to be using the PowerShell CLI or the Bash CLI, to actually work on this particular one. So based on the instruction that we currently have, so the first thing we need to do is for us to access the Azure portal. So what I'm going to do is once I click on this, it takes you to the Azure portal. I'm going to put this side by side. Yep, so that we can see the instructions. I'm going to close this. I don't need this here live. It's not even closing. What's going on? Hey, mate. Okay, so let me authenticate to the portal. Now I'm logged into the portal and I still want to be sure that I'm logged into the right environment. Let me see, but I know for sure I'm logged into the right environment. Yes. So I'm signed into the portal. The next thing for us to create a resource. And how do we create a resource? There is an option when you log into the portal which says create a resource. Now for me, I might not like to create a resource from here, even though I actually create a resource from the portal. But for this particular one, we are told to click on the create a resource, then search for virtual machine, then search for create, which is completely fine. You can do that. But yeah, why I don't really like doing this is now you need to start looking for where a virtual machine is. Yes, there is a virtual machine as one of the popular services, which I can just click and create. You can also go to compute here and search for virtual machine because virtual machine is within compute. But the best way or the way I do this is just to go into this search bar and search for whatever resource I want to create. So I'd rather just search for virtual machine from here, instead of going to click on create a resource, then from the resource search for whatever resource I want to create. So most times you might see me doing this, but let's just go with what we currently have. So it says click on resource, virtual machine, then create. So we have the virtual machine. I'm going to create it from here. So it's just for you to follow the steps. And if you have got any, question or anything, what I'm going to do today, before we sign up for this particular class today, I'm just going to drop a link to the Slack environment so that you guys can also join and interact with each other. Now we have subscription. Make sure that you can actually see this. Once you are logged into the Microsoft Learn environment, you would always have access to this particular subscription. And within the subscription, we are told to select a resource that starts or begins with learn. So that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be selecting. I'm not to create a new resource group. If you do that, I'm not sure we have the permission to. Let me say I want to do that. I'm not sure. Yeah. So you can see, and that was what I was saying. You need to be sure. You need to follow the instruction. Don't try to create a resource group when you are told to select one, because this is the Microsoft environment, sandbox environment. They've actually configured everything that is needed for you to complete that particular lab. So don't try to create a new resource group or a different resource. You might not have access to it. So you have only been given permission based on what is actually within this particular lab. So I'm selecting that virtual machine name, which will be the next thing, is for me to copy this and paste. I'm going to use the same thing. The region I was told to leave the default, which is the West US. Availability options, leave default. You can see we talked about the availability options. Now there are no availability options for this one, but I'm so sure we talked about the availability zones. We talked about the availability set where I explained the fault domains, the update domain. We talked about virtual machine scale set also. If you need to scale out, why your workload is experiencing higher traffic. So depending on the kind of availability option that you want to leverage on, you can actually, but for the purpose of this particular lab, we are told to leave it as default. Security type, leave default. Image, leave default. Image is your operating system. Now, we talked about the fact that when you're creating an IaaS services, you have the permission, you have the, authority to decide which operating system goes in there. Because at the end of the day, you will be the one to manage everything, regarding that particular um, resource that you've created. So if I'm creating a virtual machine, I can decide to change it from Ubuntu, maybe from a Linux server to maybe Windows, whatever you want to do, you can decide that from here. So I'm just going to stick with this because I'm being told to leave it as default. VM architecture, leave it as x64. Size, leave it as default. And this was what we were talking about when we talked about the um, cost option, the cost management. Now, we talked about the fact that one of the benefits of leveraging on cloud is the reliability, that it gives you. And when we talk about reliability, we talk about performance reliability. We talked about um, every other thing. Here, under this one, there's another benefit we talked about, which is the predictability. Now, for the predictability, we talk about the cost also. Now, it says if you create these per month, you're going to be spending $85 per month. But since Azure and other cloud services operate these, OPEX a way of, of costing, now you only be charged for what you have used. So this is what I will have in mind if I have this machine, up and running 24 hours every day of the month. Now, if I don't use this, or if I'm done with this by the end of the day and I decide to start turning it off after I'm done with it, I won't pay up to this. If I use this only today and I decide to, deallocate it, to delete it, I won't pay up to this. I will only pay for the time I've actually made use of it. So that's there, you can see the cost predictability, coming into place there. Now, here it says run with Azure Spot, unchecked, size, architectural type, changes to password, not SSH. Then you can decide to put in a username, which is the Azure user. I'm just going to copy this from here, paste this. Then this one, just give it, a password. That's for you to decide what password goes in there. Now, yep, inbound, public inbound, select none. Now, if I've selected none, because I always want to RDP into this machine, sorry, I want to always log into this machine, I will not be able to do so because I've selected none. You know, if you want to always log in to a Linux machine, you need to make sure that the SSH is turned on, which is on port 22. You are going to start seeing all these ports coming into play. You know, if you want to have an application hosted on this machine and you want people to be able to access that application, you need to turn on this port, which is the HTTP port. Now, that means your application will be live on that particular port, which is the port 80. Now, if you decide to now have an SSL certificate, which is you making your site secure, then you need to have this port 443 turned on. So when I start talking about some of the ports, when we get to AZ, 104, we'll talk about all these ports. Okay, RDP, if it's a Windows machine, you need 3398, 96 to be turned on. If it's SSH machine, if it's a Linux machine, you need port 22, which is the SSH port. If you need to host an application on that particular machine, you need, either the HTTP port. It's not even in that. You need the HTTP port compulsory. Now it's optional. You might decide to have HTTPS port, which is the 443 enabled. That's if you want to have that particular site secured If not, you just continue leveraging on the HTTP port. So now we are told to turn this off, which is select none, and click on review and create. I'm just going to click on review and create. We're not, there are a lot of other options we might want to set up here. You will see what's going to come up with. It's going to come up with the costing per hour for me. So, I've told you this is how much it's going to cost you per month. So I'm only going to be using this in this particular hour. When I spin it up now, that means for this hour, this is how much you're going to be paying. So if I decide to say, oh, I want to be using this just 4 hours per day, I know how much I will be paying at the end of the month if after the 4 hours I've deallocated it. So I'm just going to leave all these the way they are and select create. So it talks about the cost associated with the machine. So and that's it. So let's hold on. Validation is done. You can see the ARM is in place now. The deployment is going on. So you can decide to wait on this page, or you can just decide to click on the authentication in progress. You can see you're going to see how this particular resource is being deployed because this is a virtual machine. It comes with some other resources also, like the VNet, the IP address, maybe if you want that to be public, you come with NSG, some other resources. All those resources are going to be deployed first before the virtual machine has been. So you can see all these other, because for every resource you create, especially you need to have it within a particular network. Now the network has been created and the virtual machine has been assigned to that network, so you can see the next task for us is just to verify. We can decide to go to resource from here, and we can decide to go back home, then click on the resource, then look for that particular, machine. But for me now, I'm just going to click on go to resource, and this goes to the virtual machine I just created. Another way, like they've said it here, is for you to click on. So this is the virtual machine. You can see it has been started. I can decide to stop it. I can decide to restart it. I can decide to delete it once I'm done. You can see the machine public IP address. If you want to connect to it, you can see some other options, where the location is running, the subscription ID, resource group, the size of the machine is 2 CPU, vCPU, 8 GB, in RAM, machine and the like. So all those other information can actually be looked up here. So like what this had said, because I've actually accessed this now, you can see it's listed on my front page as one of the recent resources. So you can decide to go from here, or if you can decide to go home, search for, select the resource group. If I look for resource group, let's say yeah, so the resource group is here. You can also search for resource group here, resource group. So then select the resource group that contains the sandbox. I'm so sure we only have one resource group, which is this guy. And within the resource group, you would see those resources that are actually within the resource group. So you can see, I told you when you are leveraging on Cloud Shell, a storage account will be created for you because that's where whatever you're running is being stored. The modules of that PowerShell and the bash needs to be stored somewhere, and that's why this has been created. You can see the Cloud Shell we were leveraging on the other time is still, stored here. You can see the virtual machine that has been created and other resources that works with the virtual machine. All right. Any question before we move to the third one? Okay, if that's just in a minute, I'm trying to. So I think the third one also um, is more like this particular one. Um, yep. So that's the third one. So I'm just going to close this guy and like this one. I think the third one here now we are going to be leveraging on scripts and not from GLI. Now you can see what's happening. This needs a different permission. Now immediately I put this in, it's asking me to start the puzzle again. So let's see. We should not have so much issue here. So here, no, that's the char. Oh my word. Yep. Yeah, that's fine. Um, so that's the yep. Nice. The last one. Yep. Okay, so I think that was one. Mm, 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 mhm, mm. Okay, good. Yep, that's this guy. Okay, this one is nice. Okay, verification complete. Now you can see I need to activate the sandbox. So this a different sandbox is active because I need, a different permission. I'll just go ahead and say activate a new sandbox for me. So what's going to happen is now you are going to see two is deactivating the other one, is verifying this guy, is going to be activating the sandbox, based on what I've requested. It's creating a new resource group. Once we go in there, the other virtual machine will not be there. Um, so you can see I needed to be sure because there is this one that we need to use the same machine that we've created. Let's see, no, not this particular one. So while this one is activating, um, let me quickly look for the link for the fourth one so that we can have that ready. Yeah, I think this is the one. So we need to use this particular one that we've created. This sandbox I'm activating now. We need to use it for the next one also. Yep. So I'm just going to drop that one here. Oh no. Give me a minute, please. Okay, so you can see that's been activated. Um, copy, paste here. Next. Okay. Yep. So this one we are going to be using this one also. This particular sandbox, we are not going to activate any other one. Now, we need to create like a Linux machine, which was what we've created the other time. But what we've done is we've gone to the portal to create that. Now we are going to be leveraging on the bash, which is the Azure CLI. All we need to do is just to run this. Now you can see this is what we did the other time. Here, what this command says is AZ. This is what we want to do. We want to create a new VM. It says AZ VM create, because if it was to be PowerShell, we'll have something like new AZVM. It tells you new, we want to, which is the verb, then hyphen AZVM. So, like I said, all the modules are online, they're documented. So if I go in here and I say new AZVM, it's because I have that. Now it's going to take you to the PowerShell script. Yeah, and says this is it. How do I use this? A new AZVM, then hyphen resource group, then the name of your resource group, hyphen location, name of your location. Those ones are very important. Then hyphen name, then hyphen credentials, whatever and it comes here and gives you example of how you can actually do this. So I'm just going to continue with the CLI that we currently have. Um, so you can see AZVM create, which is this CLI. You can also see it's kind of different from the PowerShell. The PowerShell only uses one hyphen. The CLI uses, two. So for you, in case you have been told, oh, okay, is there a difference between these and the other one? But one thing I just need you to understand here is we are trying to create a VM, even if you don't have this command saved, anywhere, or this command, but you should understand what we're trying to do. Now, we want to create a VM. This is the resource group where we will need to create the VM. This is the name of the VM we are trying to create. This is the public IP address that we want to assign. What type of address? Is it basic? Is it standard? What image are we trying to install? Like the operating system, are we trying to, what would be the admin username, which was, the Azure user, the same one that we used or we added when we were creating from the portal the other time. And how do we log into that particular machine? Now we do not want to use password. We want to generate an SSH key to be able to authenticate into that machine. So I'm not going to do anything. Like I said, just imagine the time we actually use in creating that from the portal as against when I have the script. I just copy this and I paste this. I paste this and I put this here. I don't have to be involved anymore. The script is just going to start doing its job. Let me see. I'm just quickly going to log into the portal, and you guys can see what is going on in there. Um, so let's see. Just so it's running already. It's going to start creating. The resource group is created already. It's just going to start creating the virtual machine. Um, okay, so I'm going to put this on the side now. Yep. I'm going to put this on the side. It's still running. Um, so I just go into that particular resource group. There's a resource group already. Let's see. It's still running. Oh, already provisioned. I wanted you guys to see, why it was provisioning it. But unfortunately, so it's still deploying though. You can see the deployment. It's still saying still deploying. But currently, and that has been done based on my own timing, so you don't have to worry. I'm in a different region, so you can see it's 14:16, and this is still 8:14. So you can see now this has been deployed. So you can see how sweet it is when you're running a script to create your resource or manage your resource, as against where you need to go in there to the portal. You need to start saying, oh, what dependent availability option do I want to select? What port do I need to activate? All those things are going to take all the time. And that's why we say you want to become a cloud engineer. You do not want to learn scripting. You do not want to learn programming. Fine. But if you learn it, will it add to what you can do? Will it benefit you? Absolutely yes. So it depends on what you really want. So I'm just going to put this back to enlarge the screen. Now the next thing for us is the VM is there. The next thing for us is to add an extension to that particular VM. So what we are trying to do here is just to upgrade the VM. Now, the other time when we were working on the GUI, we selected a port, we opened, we were told to select no port. But now we want to have a web app. on this particular virtual machine. One of the two you leverage on when you want to create a web application, you want to run it on your machine is Nginx. There are other ones like Apache, like if you're leveraging on Windows machine, you can use the IIS. It all depends on what you want to. But now we want to host a web application on this particular machine, and that's what we want to do. So yeah, don't worry about this script. This script just says, it goes to the GitHub environment to download and configure that particular Nginx. So I'm just going to copy this and paste the same script without looking back. I'm just going to run this. Now you can do the same from the portal. You need to log into that machine and start running Nginx on that machine. Upgrade it. When you can actually, do this by running a custom script. Now, this particular custom script, I would show you how you can actually run it within your environment also, without the need for you to log into that machine. So let's see. I think I've got this one here. Let's see the machine I've created. So if you want to do this using GUI and not leveraging on that particular command script. So if I go in here, let's wait for. I'm going to click on this virtual machine. I do not need to authenticate to it. So you can come down to extensions and applications. We're still going to talk about this. So you can see the custom script that is being updated, or added. This is it. This is the custom script. You can decide to, do yours, add a new custom script or add some other extensions depending on what you want to do, but for now, I'm only running a custom script, so I'm just going to leave it that way so that we don't have too much information. This is still running. You can see how sweet it is when you are running this using script instead of trying to log in. Now you can see this has been completed. You don't need to do anything by going into the GUI environment. Yeah, so that's all we need to do. But the only thing, like I said, okay, this command uses the console script. It tells you what happens. So for you to be able to add like a new package, we need to first upgrade the virtual machine. But don't worry about this. Then the next thing is to install the Nginx because we are trying to install a web application on that particular machine. And the next thing for us is to set this. This is what the script has done, for us. Now we need to continue, to the next lab, which is where we are going to be able to access the web application that has actually been installed on this particular machine. So I'm going to copy the next one and go to the next lab here. Now, like I said, I need to continue using that same machine. And because I only have an interval of an hour, or a time, timing of an hour before that particular. So after 1 hour, that sandbox will be deallocated. You will not have access to whatever resource you've created. So the best for you is to make sure that you have completed these two labs within that particular hour. So you make sure that the lab, I think it's lab 3 and 4, you need to do them together. Now, for you to be able to check that that machine is still running, because we need that Nginx that has been configured on that machine. In this lab, we are only configuring network access. We talked about how you can restrict access to a virtual machine. We talked about you having NSG, which is the security group. We talked about virtual machines within the same VNet are able to access each other. Once they are outside, another VNet, they won't be able to. Even if you want to extend or you want to give access to, users from public environment, you need to configure, a security group so that those users can have access to, this. Now, I'm just going to continue by running these commands. The first command says run AZ VM list. When we are trying to create this VM, we ran a command that says azvm create. Now, because I want to, if it was to be PowerShell, I'll be running get hyphen azvm. What I'm trying to do is I'm going to, read, or list out the ones the VM I've created within the environment. Now, I'm just going to say I'm going to run this azvm list, and what this is going to do is going to search for the VM within my environment to say, okay, we still have these within the environment as a VM list, and you can see this is the machine, and these are all the other properties related to the machine. But what I'm more concerned about is, oh, okay, do we still have the name? Okay, that's the virtual machine I'm running. Then I can go to the resource group, where which resource group is in created in. These are some other properties like the OS that I've created. You can see this is Linux, which what admin user have I used in creating this particular machine, Azure user, this is the public key of the SSH if I want to authenticate and the like. So this is, what you're going to see, and it shows me that particular machine I've created is still working. Now, I want to access the web server, which I've done. All I need to do is just to run these, but for sure, I won't be able to, so I'm just going to run these. You don't really have to worry yourself about all these guys. So it wants me to get the IP address. Now it saved that already. So run this command to get your IP address. Now it saved that already. Now I can just do so here to get the IP address. I only need this command, which is the azvm list hyphen IP address. But here, what we've done is we are trying to store whatever result we are getting from here in this particular variable we've So sometimes you might see this. It's kind of complicated now, because this is all we need. But because we want to store it and use it, somewhere, maybe um, somewhere else, then we just need to run that. So the next thing I'm going to do is to try to access that particular IP address I've stored so that I can get the IP address. Now you can see the core connect. If it was to be a maybe PowerShell, I'll just run, okay, hold on. IP address, where did I IP? Uh, yeah, that's not, yeah. So yeah, it wants to access this, but because the there is no permission to that particular machine now, I will start getting this error. So the next thing for us is, can see the error. This is the output. This is the expected output. You are going to start getting that error. Now you can echo the IP address to see the IP address itself. The echo means you want to if you want to list out. So if I echo these, this is the IP address, of that particular machine. And what has happened is this is the variable that has been stored. You can see what I just did is to run a command that can list out what is actually stored within this particular variable. So you can see echo. If it was to be PowerShell, the only thing I need to run is just this, and it will just bring it out for me. So yeah, I can put this somewhere. Yeah, this is the IP address. Then copy the IP address and put it maybe in clipboard or open a browser and put it in there. So I'll put it there, and I will not be able to access anything. Now, this was what I was talking about when I said, or when we were talking about the DNS. I told you guys that every web application that you have in there, they are seated on a server. They are seated on a machine. And for us to be able to now say, this is the machine that this server or this application is seated on, we need a DNS that will keep the information of that particular machine, you know, um, and attach it or pair it with a domain name. So this is the DNS. If I have a domain name, called or google.com, then all I need to do is just to enter a DNS record to point that particular domain name to this particular machine. So every time people try to access google.com, it takes them to this machine. And that's why maybe it might have happened to you at some point. They will tell you, oh, okay, that particular domain name is not going. But if you go to this particular IP address 192.168.0.1, you'll be able to access that site also. It's just telling you that, oh, okay, you've got access to the IP address that is running that web application. So now I still cannot access it because that particular machine, the port is not open for me to be able to access. I told you guys that before you can actually host a web application and you want people to see it from outside, from the public, you need to have the port 80, port 443 if you want these to be SSL managed, and that's why we are still having this particular error. So the next thing for us is, to list out the security group. What security group do we currently have within the environment? I'm just going to paste this, and that's going to keep it. Now there is this security group that has been created, which is my VM I think we've got that particular. Um, we've got this opened. If I go to my network setting, or you even go to the list of the resources created within your VM, within your resource group, you will see it there. But this is the NSG that has been created, and this is it. Where is it? My NSG, my VM NSG, and that is what we can see, on the other side also. And these are the rules that have been created. So we need to edit a rule to allow access to that particular machine. Now you can see. So I'm just going to minimize this again. So this is the NSG. The next thing you can see my VM NSG. The next thing for us is to now run this command to see, what are the rules associated with that particular NSG. So I'm just going to put this here. So it's going to list out all the rules. Now this says, okay, access, allow, destination, destination prefix. These are just the way the rules are. The same way we have it there, you can do it from the portal. When you are editing your NSG, I can create a new rule to say, okay, this is the rule for us to be able to manage, create. So we'll talk more about these rules, when we get to the 104, because we are going to be talking about, what's the priority based on the numbers that we can see here. What's the least number that we can have? What's the highest one? What are some of the default ones that have been created for us by Microsoft? Can we delete them? Can we edit them? You know, how do we make sure that whatever has been created, we can actually have a different NSG rule that will supersede that particular NSG rule that has been created by Microsoft. So those are stuff we are going to be talking about. So these are the rules associated with this particular NSG. The next thing is for us to now open this rule so that we can actually allow access to um, that particular web application. So I'm just going to run this here now. So you can see I'm not really talking about, because the only thing for us is for us to be able to access. Now you can see the only port that's been allowed is the port 22. That means if I want to authenticate into this machine, yes, I can authenticate. But the port that I need, that port 80 that is needed for us to be able to access a virtual a web application on a machine is not enabled. So now you can see we are trying to enable this port 80 with the new security group rule that we are going to be creating. So I'm going to just copy this also. So I told you the other time you need that port 80 to be enabled before you can access a web application on a machine, at least at the minimum. And if you want to access that web application, a secure space, leveraging on SSL, then you need to have port 443 enabled. So this is it. I'm going to run the other script again and see what has been enabled now because we've created a new rule. Now you can see another port has been enabled, which is the port 80. Uh, Before now, it was just port 222, port 22. Now we have created a new port to allow access to our web application. Now the next thing for us is just to, we verify. The next thing for us is just to go to that particular web application again and see. Now, if I call this now, if I call this will work. Yeah, this tells you what is actually within that particular web app now. This is what is this HTML file or script that is there just says welcome to Azure. My name is this. You can decide to edit it later. If I reload this now, you will see the same thing. Welcome to Azure. My name is this. Now you can see it's not secured because this is actually on port 80. So instead of us to say, this is port 80, it's still the same thing, it's still going back to that port 80. You can decide to inspect this also. If you want to inspect more tools, then I can go to developer tools and inspect, just don't worry about these jargons I'm typing. Now you can see here this HTTPS port 80. So this is the address itself, HTTP, the server IP address, then hyphen 80. It shows it's on port 80. If I try to do the port 443, it's not going to work because there is no SSL, port enabled on this machine. And this one say is a get result and it's okay, then that's why we're able to access. But don't worry about all these. You can see the server is an nginx server. You can get more information about that. But don't worry about this. You'll soon find out. All right. Any question before we go ahead to the next one? I hope you guys are not tired already. It's part of it. Oh, these guys are not talking today. Oh my word. I hope you guys are good. Let me copy the fifth one and let's see what we have there. Copy. Yep. That's the fifth one. Now for the fifth one, it's a different one. I'm going to just activate a new. Yes, Sam.
Yeah, thanks. I just want to ask a question. How do we see that on the GUI, how do we see what we've just done now? That's web
Yeah,
access thing.
yeah, yeah, yeah. You can see. I hope that has not. So let's. Yeah, I've not activated that. That one is still working. Um. So I hope you are talking about the rules that we just created, right?
Yes,
Yep.
yes, that's right.
Yeah. So this is the one, and this is the rule we just created. Do you understand? Now you can do the same here by going here, creating like a new import rule, inbound rule. Then what's the source? the source is actually going from the internet, which is fine. If you want to restrict the source to a virtual machine or a machine itself, this is fine. What's the destination? The destination is, any is fine. You can decide to. So here is where you now change the port that you want to leverage on. This is port 80, right? Then what do you want to do? What action? This is the port. What action? And yeah, this is the protocol. I can decide to leave it on, any. I can decide to select TCP port, protocol. Now, action is to allow access to this particular machine. So I just go ahead to add, you know, um, it now depends on what priority I'm giving to this. So the way this work is the lesser the number, the higher the priority. So if you want to do this from the GUI, also fine. But for me, I'd rather just run a script. Does that answer your question?
Yes, please. Thanks.
All right. So the next one, which is for us to create a storage blob. We've talked about how we can actually create storage accounts and the kind of storage accounts that we have. We talked about different ones. We talked about the blob. We talked about table. We talked about disks. We talked about queue. And the like. So now, for us to be able to store unstructured data, we need a blob. So for blob within Azure is used to store unstructured data. Now, for me to do that, because this is going to have a different permission, I need to activate a different sandbox. So bear with me where I go through this challenge. Um, it's just it's just so pathetic that um, a robot needs to check if I'm a human being. But that's one thing I need to do if I want to get access. Is a must. Yeah, that's fine. This is one. That's fine. This is 2 plus 2. Oh, nice. This look more like a school. And then the last one, don't try to mix any. You will start all over again, which is this one. Yep. Now a new sandbox is going to be activated for me. Now we are making use of the third sandbox for today. So let's hold on. These two finally activate. So the assignment has been assigned. Why this is going on? Let me see if I can pull out the last two. Okay, you still have three though. Oh my word. You can let me know if you are overwhelmed. We can, stop here and continue with the lab next week. Because after next week we might have to take a break. I'm not going to be around for a while, maybe for 2 weeks. Okay, so this is the third sandbox we're using today. And for us to be able to do this, all we need to is to log in to the Azure portal. We are not going to be running this from our, the scripts, the bash environment or the Azure CLI or the Cloud CLI or whatever, you're leveraging on. We are going to be doing this from the portal. So just give me a minute. What error are you getting? And maybe, okay, I'm going to stop here and I will let you guys, just ask your questions. But let me complete this lab, then we can go to the other labs next week. Um, Here we have storage account. That's what we're creating. I can decide to create a storage account, by doing this new AZ storage, So, but the way it comes, we just have to write it. Or that's for that's for but since I'm in Bash, I can do AZ um, storage create, then I start putting in those important things like the resource group, which is always needed, like the location where I want to, put in the storage account. Now, um, I'm going to look for create a new resource. Like I said, for me, I rather just type it in here rather than going to create a new resource. It all depends on what you want. I'm just going to click on storage. Now it just takes me there. Now I've got one already because of this cloud share that has been activated. I click on create a new storage, and you can see why I always say, going to the GUI is kind of difficult because you need to make sure that all this information that has been supplied are thoroughly, or you put them, correctly. Name of storage account, you can decide to put in any name, but your name needs to be unique. We talked about the fact that when you create a storage account, it's not like a virtual machine where you can just use random names. This one is going to create like a URL, for every storage account, just like you've got like a link to your Google account also. So this one is going to create, different. So I'm just going to use Baba Femi. Let's hope that works. Okay, that's fine. Then so that's what you are saying, create a unique storage account name. The region, I'm going to leave it default. Performance, I'm going to leave it as, I'm going to change it to, no, that's not. Performance, I'm going to leave it as standard. Redundancy options. Now, we talked about different redundancy options. We talked about the LRS, the GRX, the GZRX, and you can see not all those options are showing here because not all those options will show, when you leverage, it depends on the kind of SKU that you've selected. If I switch this to premium, you would see that there are some other ones. I think that's for blob blob. Let's see. Blob blob file. Uh, let's see. Page blob. Okay, so I think standard I've got. I should have more than this though. Standard I've got, um, the locally and geo. And if you see, if I switch to, the premium, select the type of, storage account that I want. I'm only seeing the locally redundancy. So I'm going to leave it to standard and leave it on locally redundancy. Sam, I'm going to check that soon. Just give me a minute. Now on the advanced tab, this is just the basics tab. On the basic tab is where we just supply metadata, like information about the resource you are creating, like the name, the region, or the SKU. Now on the advanced tab, they want us to enable anonymous access, enable anonymous access to that particular container so that we can access that container from outside. It is not going to be, so you need to enable the anonymous access and just review, which is fine. And the only thing you need to do is just create. So I'm just going to click on create and review. Let's wait. This is also going to give me all the information. Something failed. Let's see. Cannot deploy resource to. Did I make a mistake here? It's telling me to select. Yeah, I selected. Select the resource group that start with Y, but I activated my. That's the only one. Okay, but I did activate a new one. Let's see. It looks like my portal has not reloaded. So let's see. I'm going to just run quickly work on this one. So redundancy, locally redundancy, tab, anonymous access. Let's see, it should validate. I hope, um, give me a minute. Yes, I'm logged in. It's telling me, so I'm going to close this entirely. Um, then run this again. Okay, sign in again. Should be an error with, okay, let me see the error you're getting before I jump back to that. Yeah, so the client with this object ID does not have, so the permission has not been assigned to that your account. I don't know why, but it should. You do not have access. In that, in that in that your portal. Can you verify that you are within the, the, I'm not restoring anything. I'm not restoring anything. Can you verify that you are within the right environment? That's so needed. Just verify you are within the right environment. You are within the I'm still getting that same error. So this is what happens when it's not, cannot deploy here, but I've activated the right storage account, sandbox. Just hold on. I'm just going to reactivate this sandbox. So this is the thing. If it's not, I feel like you're still seeing the last one. Okay. So we're within that sandbox. Yeah, that's nice. I think we are facing the right. So the same thing. The permission that needs to be assigned to me has not been assigned correctly, and that's why I'm facing this also. I know if I try to do this from, let's see, same error, same error. So the right permission has not been assigned, and that's why same error. Hmm. No way. I'll fix this. Just give me. So in this kind of case, I might need to go through the authentication again, but I'm just going to use a incognito tab. This thing cannot. So with incognito tab, it's not going to be. So I feel like the environment is cached already. So by working on using this one, it takes you to an environment that is not cached, so you can log in as if you just logged into um a new environment. Just give me a minute. And this is one of the thing, we will not just go and say, oh, okay, yeah, we'll find it, we'll find out what we need to find out what's going on. So I'm just going to copy the first. Yeah. So I need to go through the process of. So I'm just going to activate this sandbox now. It's still saying it somehow. It's still saying it. It's not supposed to see it. It's not supposed to. Do I have? Okay, let's see. I'm going to go. I need to put in. Yep, I know that will happen. So most times when you do this and you start getting that error, it might be because it's cached. So let's see. Just going to use the random one. Locally redundancy, advanced. Click and create. If it's not cached, except if there is an issue with Microsoft environment there. You can see now, unfortunately, the other one was cached. So you might want, Sam, you might want to do this, using incognito or any other browser aside the one you're working on, So now you can see I'm able to deploy this now because now it's not seeing that whatever permission that needed to be assigned wasn't assigned to that account because maybe I'm using the wrong sandbox or you were still using the old sandbox, and that's why. So it's been deployed now. So I'm just wait for this guy. Now the next thing is going to be, let me see if I could pull that one to, let's see if I could pull it. Yep, that's fine. That's fine. That's fine. The resource has been deployed. I can go to the resource, and this is the resource. This is storage account I've created. Now, the next thing I need to do is to work with the blob storage. Now, the fact that we've deployed a storage account doesn't mean that we've started working on the blob. If you come down to the storage browser here, or if you go to the data storage here, you will see the kind of storage that we can create, which is the blob. The blobs are always created within a container. The file share, we talked about it, the queue, the table, we talked about it. Also, if you go to the storage browser, you will be able to see your blob containers, the files, the queue, but I rather just stick with this guy. So the next thing I need to do is to select container, and I create a new container, enter the name, private non-anonymous, um, I just create a name and say test. Your containers are files that you upload, or it might be image or something. Then I just create. Now that is fine. Then I'm just going to go in here and upload a file from my system. What this guy is trying to show you, I don't know what is within that screenshot though. So I'd rather just go to the pictures. I'm going to upload this guy. Yep. So we talked about that. We talked about the fact that unstructured data is what we are storing. So we are storing image now. Now this is it. All I need to do is just to go to this blob, copy it, then copy, the output and see if I could access this. Because this is set to private non-anonymous, I will not be able to access it. So I just put this one here, and you can see it's going to be telling me this guy is not, it doesn't exist because I've selected private anonymous. Um, Private anonymous means no matter who is trying to access, you will not be able to access it. So I need to change that permission. And how do I change the blob permission? All I need to do is just to go to the um, blob and change the access level from private anonymous to read access for blob only. So I just have to go back here. Then I go to the blob that has been created, change access level. Then from private non-anonymous, I can change it to blob, read access. So there are different permissions when it comes to access of your blob. So the private non-anonymous, regardless of who you are, you'll not be able to access, except we start setting some. When we start talking about storage account, you will see how we can go around this, by setting like a timing, leveraging on some other technology within the storage account to have access. But for this one, I'm saying you should have access, but you only have access to this blob if I give access to this on this container, meaning all the blob that will be created within this particular container, you have access to it. So for now, I only need, the blob access now. So I'll just click on yes, and this change the access level. Then if I go back here and I reload this guy, you would see that I now have access, to that particular image that I've uploaded. So that's your blob. This is just the way I can actually create um like your own Google Drive for you and give you that 15 GB. You can start uploading, your images, you can start uploading your videos, but I manage the storage account, like Google manages the storage account where your Google link, well, your Google Drive is now, or Google Photos, everything. And now you can see I'm able to access, that's the lab 5, I guess. All right, so I'm just going to stop it there. If you have got any question, you can ask me now. Um, uh, Before I say we call it a day, or this is where we call it a day. Any question? I'm so sure you guys are not overwhelmed. We have so many today. You guys can go back to this link. I'm going to post the link maybe on the LinkedIn environment also for people that joined on LinkedIn, to be able to access, but if you do not find the link anywhere, you can go to my YouTube environment, go to that playlist, for the Azure Fundamental, and within the description of each of those videos, I've got the links in there. All right. So, any question, Sam? It might make more sense if you just unmute and type. If you are free, if that place is not noisy, instead of just typing, if you have got any question.
Oh, sorry, thanks. I wasn't typing. I was actually extracting those links out.
Oh, okay, okay,
Thank
that's
you.
that's fine. All right,
Yeah.
so I believe,
Then for
uh,
the error, I think I will go and log in as well afresh after the class and try it
yeah,
afresh. I
please
guess
do.
it's also what you experienced.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's cash.
thanks.
Yeah, it's cash somehow. You know. All right, so I'm just going to call it a day. Yeah. Since you guys have got no question, talk to you guys next week. Bye, everyone.